Hello and welcome to this special bonus episode of Telling Your Asset Management Story. Lalit Agarwal's career began as a mechanical engineer before moving into leadership roles in higher education facilities and eventually becoming president and CEO of APPA. From that vantage point, Lalit has a unique perspective on the challenges facing institutions today. From workforce shortages to shifting enrollment patterns and the growing need for smarter use of space and infrastructure. In this conversation, we'll zoom out and explore how organizations can frame facilities not just as costs, but as strategic assets that support long-term success.
Lalit, thank you very much for joining us on this bonus episode of Telling Your Asset Management Story. Going to be a little bit different than our normal podcast approach today, but I really appreciate your time and coming on to talk about not only your own journey, but APPA as well.
Thank you, Bill. I really appreciate you reaching out and asking me to be on this podcast. I was not expecting it, to be honest. Because I think I have a different perspective than your typical podcast, as you mentioned, but happy to share my thoughts and speak to your audience.
Excellent. And it looks like you're in the home office today. Usually we're meeting at a conference somewhere across North America. So I'm in our Toronto office today and you're at home. It's kind of a weird thing. We're not in a hotel. We're not eating bacon for breakfast together. So
That's true. It's funny. I think this last 16 months since I took this role at APPA, I have traveled most, and outside of my own staff or board of directors, the one person that I've run into more than anybody else is Bill Roth. You are a huge supporter of APPA, and we really appreciate your support for APPA International, the regions and the chapters, and amazing work that you do for our profession and our industry.
Oh, well, we really appreciate, thank you for that. And we certainly really appreciate APPA. And we've been longtime members and involved. And certainly a lot of the changes that you've brought in, I think, are going to make it even better for business partners as well as institutional members. So yeah, let's get into your journey and how you came to APPA and your journey all the way through the higher ed sector, through the business partner side, and to get to APPA from the association perspective.
Yeah, happy to. And I'll start a little earlier than even that because I was born in India and I spent first 21 years of my life in India. I'm an engineer by training. Went to my undergrad school in India for mechanical engineering. And then for pursuing my master's, I ended up coming to the United States, ended up landing in Nebraska for pursuing my master's degree. And when I came here, it was a very different type of campus than what I was used to in India. And it was a little more magical. It's something like you see in movies and TV shows, in a sense, compared to what my experience was. And it was amazing. The trash just magically disappeared. The grounds kept keeping themselves up, and the buildings were comfortable. In winter, you didn't feel cold. In summer, you didn't feel warm. So it was just a magical thing. And during my master's program, I ended up having to collaborate with the facilities team at University of Nebraska because my experiments required changing the HVAC system a little. And that was my first exposure to facilities world. And I was fascinated. I was like, oh, this is what's making this trash go away by magic. This is what keeps the lawn mowed and this flower gardens maintained. So I got to learn a lot more about facilities and really started appreciating the work they did. So much so that when I graduated, I ended up taking a role within the facilities department here at University of Nebraska, and ended up working there and building automation system, energy and utilities, and eventually left the university as an executive director of operations. And then I worked in a private sector for 2.5 years in a software company, again related to energy and utilities and facilities management, at a company called Energy Cap. And during this time, I stayed very engaged with APPA because, again, it's the bigger mindset. It's the pie is bigger than what we all get exposed to. So in 2013 is the first time I was exposed to APPA's professional development programming. And since then, I've been either a recipient of APPA programs or even contributor to APPA programs. And when this role came open in early 2024, I decided to put my hat in the ring and eventually ended up taking this job.
That's awesome. Well, and I think it's interesting how many folks in higher ed actually end up working in facilities at their alma mater, like whether it's directly or they leave and they come back. I think 2 or 3 of the folks that we've interviewed this season have done the same thing. And in some cases, they've gone on and moved around a little bit and then come back, or just gone directly in. So that's really interesting. And I think that having both the institutional side and the business partner side, I think, gives you a really unique perspective in your current role as president and CEO of APPA. And I guess for those that don't know, tell us a little bit about APPA. Tell us what it's all about. Tell us who can be members, that sort of thing.
Yeah, so APPA is a very robust 110, now 111-year-old organization. It has been around since 1914, when it was first formed by a very few group of physical plant superintendents, as they used to be called back in the day. And it's a very vibrant and growing association. So we are a professional association. We have about 1,200 members. And when we say members, we count institutions or organizations or companies as members. So outside a few small cases, we don't give out individual membership. Most of our membership is organization-based. Out of those 1,200, about 1,000 of them are educational institutions, and about 200 are business partners. So like TYAMS is one of the business partners that we have. And within those 1,000 institutions, we have about 670 are 4-year colleges, about 150 are community colleges, and about 110, 120 are K through 12, and some affiliate like nonprofit museums, military bases, and things of that nature. So all in all, we have 1,200 members as an institutional organizational members, but translated into individuals, human beings, we have about 13,000 individual members. So these members are brought together through conferences, through events. APPA has a robust program for professional development, all the way from frontline individual to a senior leader within the organization. We have publications providing you with good benchmarking data, with good best practices, guidelines for your operations. And we also now have advisory services. So if somebody needs assistance in getting evaluation of their facilities program, we can find you peers or recently retired peers, and they can come and give you a good, robust set of actionable recommendations that you can engage in. And it's at a very reasonable cost, because APPA is a nonprofit. We are not in this to make money. We are in this to make sure that we serve our members.
Oh, that's awesome. Yeah, certainly having that peer review or that peer feedback, I think could really help organizations, particularly somebody new coming into, it's like there's always people changing and things changing, and facilities management is no different than a lot of other businesses. There's a lot of retirements and things like that. So having that ability to kind of come in and get a lay of the land, I think that I was really interested to learn more about that during the fall of 25 conference season, because I know that was a hot topic. So hopefully more institutions will take advantage of that to help them.
And also to your point, there is also a slight trend that instead of just promoting people from within the facilities organization, we are now seeing people that have no facilities or even higher ed experience coming into facilities role in higher ed. And while they may have the skills to be very successful in the long run, in the short run, they may struggle in trying to see what the immediate next thing that they need to work on. And having programs like APPA Advisors, we allow them to push the easy button, really, and say, all right, somebody tell me from a neutral, unbiased opinion, what is the things that we need to prioritize and work on.
That's awesome. Well, and there's so many different parts and plates to be spinning in facility and infrastructure, on-campus infrastructure asset management, that yeah, I mean, it's hard for anybody to know, to be an expert in all of them, right? I mean, that's where that teamwork comes in. And in kind of in that vein, I mean, obviously, Lalit, you're out talking to, you're at these conferences, you're talking to your members, you're talking to members of other associations overseas based on some of APPA's other institutional partnerships in South Africa and the UK and things like that. So obviously, telling your asset management story is kind of focused on the asset management side, which is pretty broad, but not everything that obviously physical plant folks do. So in your travels and in your engagement with your members, what are some of the most common asset management challenges that you're hearing from your members, and kind of how do you see them tackling those?
Yeah, I mean, there is definitely some recency bias, especially here in US with the recent changes to Department of Education, the funding models, and all that. But even leaving that recency bias aside, even if you look at what's going on in the last 4, 10, 15 years and what we think that things are going to go forward, the challenges are, in a broad sense, bucketed into 3 or 4 big things. People are retiring. How are you going to maintain that institutional knowledge, and how do you plan to backfill that skill gap that you're going to be creating? So that's one of the biggest challenges that we hear again and again from our members, and even the international partners that we have in UK, Australia, and Southern Africa. I joke when I visited them, I was like, look, the concrete cracks the same no matter where you are. The facilities management, asset management world, they may have some different rules and regulations and laws and procedures, but ultimately it's still built environment, and the built environment has similar challenges no matter where you are. And that's true within even North America, whether it's in Canada or US. So retention and recruitment is definitely one of the big challenges. Outside of that, stewardship of your dollar. So many of the institutions still see facilities as a cost center, meaning that it is something that takes money rather than give back money. And many institutions still don't see facilities at the leadership table, and that's changing. We are working hard towards professionalizing this industry, and we are starting to see some institution recognize that the operations/facilities leader should be at the presidential cabinet level, and that's changing. But how do you educate that? How do you help our leaders talk not just facilities language, but the business, but the institutional language? So that becomes a very big area for improvement for all of us. And only when you translate your facilities needs into risk and monetary values, you are finally going to get somewhere. Because otherwise, if you start talking BTUs and kilowatt hours, you will lose the president and the CBO. So that's another big challenge. And the last one I'm going to say is technology. And 20 years ago, we kept talking about technology more in the building automation, digitization. And suddenly in the last 16, 18 months, we are talking about artificial intelligence taking over all our jobs. And I recently met somebody that said, AI is not taking your job. It's the person who knows how to use AI who will be taking your job. Which is, I think, very apt, because AI is the augmentation of human, not replacement of human.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, and it's interesting because you mentioned facilities as a cost center, right? And that's one of the things that we've often tried to communicate with folks is, no, you have to change the perception, right? And asset management, there's a reason why it's called asset management, because your facilities are an asset. And if you look at it as a cost, human nature is to cut cost, right? That's what you do with cost, right? You cut cost. That's the first thing you do to get more efficient. Whereas if you look at it as an asset, what do you do with an asset? You invest in an asset, right? And if you can change that, again, focusing on risk, focusing on all these other things, if you can change that perspective, frame it from a risk management perspective, so it's about, the reduce. You can't eliminate, but it's about reducing and mitigating risk, as well as supporting the ongoing strategy of an organization, whether that's higher ed or K-12 or state or local government, whatever. That is just a totally different mindset. And it's hard to do sometimes, because, as you say, facilities has been kind of, how many different schools do you see where it's been passed around to 6 or 7 different departments over the years, right? It's in HR, it's in finance, it's over here. So I'm really excited to see that it's that you're seeing it be elevated. And it's interesting you say the challenges are the same, everywhere that you've had a chance to go, because that was going to be one of my follow-up questions is, do you see any differences when you're going to Australia or South Africa, other than the water spins a different direction in the toilet, of course. But other than that, it sounds like things are pretty similar.
They are. I mean, the local laws and local rules do make the process be a little different. And the only other difference I would say is the maturity. So there are some areas where building automation systems are becoming a thing now, where in North America, for example, they have been around for 20, 30 years. And we are moving on to the next chapter. So the maturity of facilities organization is slightly shifting, although in some places, actually, facilities leaders are called chief operating officers. So they actually have a seat at the table. Even within our K through 12 schools, many places, especially the independent K through 12 facilities, is direct portfolio of the chief operating officer. So that's the positive side of things. But also, there are certain areas where maturity is not that high, but it's getting there. And the desire is there for us to become mature no matter where we are.
Yeah, it's interesting, and I haven't seen it in North America in higher ed. It doesn't mean there's not anybody out there, but in K to 12, I'm seeing more folks with the title Chief Facilities Officer, and that's kind of interesting, and I think it does elevate the importance and the role and the criticality to the organizational success. So it'll be interesting to see if we see that coming into to higher ed at all, as you've seen it sort of in some other areas. So you talked a little bit about technology and talked a little bit about the future, Lalit, and obviously, yeah, AI is everywhere. And I will couch this with a lot of what I hear people doing that they're calling AI is actually just automation. It's not actually AI, but we won't go down that path. So, and maybe getting into some specifics about how you see and how what your members are talking about, how they see specifically AI evolving asset management, but just other things that you see changing over the next 5 to 10 years, AI related or not.
That's one of my biggest pet peeves when people just start putting an AI sticker on every product that they are putting out there. So I was like, really, tell me what about it is AI. So I have my skeptical glasses on every time anybody says it's AI driven and we just added AI to our product. It's like, yeah, whatever. I mean, I think technology is definitely going to be a driver, especially in the current situation where budgets are shrinking and we are being asked to do more with less or different with less, as some
or even less with less, as they talked about at
less
HEF
with
when we were
less,
there, right? That's the first time I heard that. Really, that was interesting.
Yeah, and that's where the service levels the service level agreements that facilities has with the rest of the campus is where they're saying, well, we need to reduce the cost and we are willing to accept lesser level of service. So that's the less with less conversation that is happening. And that's where I think, again, APPA has been leading. The guidelines that we publish don't just talk about staffing levels, but they also marry them with service level. Those are our published APPA guidelines books that any member or even non-member can purchase from our website. So while we are struggling with sometimes the basics, we are also trying to leverage technology as we talked about. So one of the challenges that we are going to see is also the additional variable of potentially reducing enrollment. And when enrollment goes down, budgets are getting tighter. I think some of at least the 4-year colleges are probably going to start seeing consolidation. And we have already started seeing it.
I was going to say, we've even seen that, right? Cabrini and a few others have.
Exactly. Yeah. So, and that's going to become more and more common. And the facilities leaders, if they are being smart about it, they will probably start better positioning themselves to when the consolidation comes. Either they become the bigger fish that eats the smaller fish, or they will be the smaller fish that needs to go and get merged with some other bigger institution. The more we can have data and the more we can have the information ready and standard procedures and documents ready, the more the ease of merging would be. It doesn't matter which side of the equation you would fall into. But in many ways, that's not necessarily a bad thing. I'm always a proponent of quality over quantity. So if there are less number of institutions that are providing better quality education, I think we as facilities leaders and indirectly our campus leaders, we owe it to our students to provide them better quality because we are no longer competing for the same faculty. We are actually collaborating with the same faculty, and the overall education program becomes better. So I don't want to get political here, but the invisible hand, as they say, I think it will basically normalize things as time goes on. But from a facilities asset management perspective, we need to be more ready with the positive mindset of, if this happens to us, how will we react to it? So that's the consolidation is definitely one of the big pieces. Um, the other thing that I think is also going to change is just continuing to build because somebody was willing to come up with the money and donate the money to the campus is probably going to start seeing a big shift. We are no longer going to have that build that we have seen over the last 40, 50, 60, at least in the US, maybe less in Canada.
Oh, no.
Okay.
Maybe a little less, but not much. No.
Okay. So I really think that we campus leaders are starting to recognize that a new space is not just the first cost; it's the overall life cycle cost of the building. And I asked this question to some people saying, hey, so what percentage of the total cost of owning that building over 50, 100 years is the actual construction cost? And people get surprised when I say it's about 3 to 5% of the cost, because 90 to 95% of the cost then is the actual operation and maintenance over that 50 to 100-year institutional cycle of that building. And maybe there is a 2 to 3% decommissioning cost, which is laid out in APPA's total cost of ownership model. So the challenge is that people are realizing just because you got one-time money from a donor, we should not just build this space. And that's where the space utilization conversation is becoming very, very important. And density of campus and proper utilization is becoming a real thing. And again, all of these things technology plays a role in, even in space utilization. There are companies out there, there are solutions out there that can help you optimize your space utilization. The biggest thing is the mindset. If you change your mindset and be progressive and willing to adapt with the changes that are coming, I think it will come to you. Somebody recently asked me, what is the one advice I would give to any facilities or asset manager? And my answer was, be curious. Be curious about what's coming. If you are closing your ears and closing your eyes, things will come to you rather than you going to them. So be curious, and that's where you're going to see the value.
No, that's great. That's great advice. And I think it's interesting you mentioned space utilization because I don't know exactly when it happened. It probably has been a long time, but it feels to me like within the departments of the institutions that the square footage of their portfolio is somehow equated to their importance or their political clout on campus. And so there's this resistance to giving up space, even if it's not being used effectively. And I think you're right. You know, in addition to consolidation, one of the things that declining enrollment is going to lead to is excess space on many, not all, because there'll always be, you know, the unicorn campuses, but that's going to be a real big issue, is trying to deal with the departmental folks that are trying to protect this space when there's no money to heat it, clean it, repair it, renew it, all of those sorts of things. And all of this building has been great for donors and getting names on buildings and new shiny buildings, but when you redline maintenance and you keep building more, it just compounds the problem, and it's going to catch up. We did a sector review project in Ontario for all of the colleges, and one of the things we found is that at a portfolio level, their facility condition index wasn't that bad. But if you actually went below the headline number, there were two portfolios. There was an original old portfolio that had a fairly significant FCI. And then there was a whole bunch of new stuff built since 2000 that had almost no deferred capital renewal because it was practically new. So the headline number looked better than what the story actually was. But the bigger problem was, as those buildings hit 25 and 30 years, you haven't been maintaining them as well as you should because you've redlined maintenance. So now your deferred capital renewal, when you hit that first 25 to 30 year life cycle, you're going to go from nothing to this huge spike. And unfortunately, I think a lot of institutions are facing that same issue, probably somewhat unexpectedly, because they've been just cruising along happy. Oh, look, we haven't had to spend any money on these buildings because they're new. But but in my head, I can't wrap, like, to me, a building built in 2000 is new in my own head, right? But it's 25 years old,
25 years old.
right? Which, major mechanical systems are life cycling out. So
Right.
it's going to be an interesting challenge for the sector for sure. One thing that I was really interested to hear, Lalit, during the fall is your outreach beyond the higher ed sector. And so, I mean, obviously, there's lots of room to grow membership within the higher ed sector, but also looking beyond that. So for anybody, both higher ed institutions and K-12 schools and other groups that you're targeting, what would you say to someone who's considering joining APPA? What are the benefits for it? What will they get? And even on the business partner side of things, for an organization that is supporting or wants to support your members, what's in it for them from an APPA perspective?
Yeah, so if you go back to the old adage of if you want to walk fast, walk alone. If you want to walk far, you need to walk together. I mean, that's the basic premise of why associations like APPA exist, is bringing people together so they can learn from each other, they can leverage the collective knowledge, and we can be collectively successful together. So that's really the basic underlying thing. And we have had some members reach out to us saying, "Hey, our budgets are being cut, so I don't know if I can afford the membership with APPA anymore. Is there anything you can tell us that we can take to our supervisors, our bosses, to convince them?" I was like, this is even more the reason. This is now the time to actually invest in your membership, because when you are being asked to cut your budgets overall, would you rather not have the opportunity to learn from the collective to make sure that you're making the best choices, you're not making the mistakes that others have made, and you can avoid those costly mistakes, or maybe put in new programs and innovative technologies or innovative ideas that will actually reduce your operational costs? So this is even more time to double down on your membership. APPA has many professional development programs which are actually open to both institutional members and business partners, where we can become more effective. APPA doesn't do any technical training necessarily, so we let the other associations offer the energy engineering training does by AEE and ASHRAE and others. We do human training. So we bring the best out of humans, and it's that other saying of the sum is greater than its parts. So when we have that effectiveness mindset that we go into, you can actually be more impactful in your daily job as an institutional member. So yes, we are definitely focused on that, and we are actually seeing our membership increase over the last year over year. We have actually seen 10% increase or more in our membership. As for business partners, again, we understand that business partners are here for an ROI. I was a business partner for 2.5 years, as you mentioned. I have a unique perspective from both sides of the equation, and I understand that business partners also want value. So business partners, when they come to us, we say, look, we give you exposure to a very big group of people. So 13,000 individuals, 1,000 plus institutions. That's a very big number that we give you exposure to. How you interact with them is up to you. You can just go to a chapter event, you can go to a regional event, you can come to the APPA National, you can do sponsorships, whatever it is, to get more or less face time depending on the size of your company. You can do that. And one other thing that we did do is we are making sure that the business partners are treated same as our institutional partners. So we are elevating the business partners. Not, I used to joke about this when I took this job, as like, look, we treat business partners like smokers. We tax the heck out of them, and then we tell them to go outside the building and smoke. We are not doing that anymore. We are trying to be as equal footing as possible. Now, there's always difference in business partner versus an owner-operator mindset. So there's going to always be some nuanced differences. But now we even have a board member position that is allocated to a business partner, and we have a business partner advisory committee. We still need more. We need to do more work with them, but we are definitely have plans to get better engagement and make sure that their voices are being heard, and we can run our ideas by them to make sure that there is some resonance there too.
No, that's certainly, I think, one of the things that we've always, appreciated about APPA. For I think my first APPA event was 2001, I think. So
You were 4 years old when you were.
Yeah, exactly. But no, I think compared to a lot of associates, and certainly the stuff that you've been doing in the last year, Lilith, has even made it even better. But a lot, like as you say, a lot of the associations that we're dealt with, it's basically like, give me your money, and then go in that room over there and we might come see you. Like that was sort of the mentality. You're not even allowed to go to any of the educational sessions or any of the social events and things like that. And okay, that's how the conference business works. But APPA's always been really different. And I mean, as you mentioned, right, we're big supporters. I personally am involved in a whole bunch of events, and it's because of that collaboration and that partnership spirit as opposed to us and them. And I think that that's really important. And I know when I'm talking to prospective business partners who want to provide services into the higher ed and the education sector in general, I'm always sort of touting that up. So I think it's working. Speaking as a business partner, it's working. It's always been valued, but it's even more so, and excited to see how it continues to grow. My last question for you is, obviously a lot of folks, and this is a little add-on as I said earlier. I know that APPA used to have an office where everybody would come to work, and since you've joined, you've moved to a fully remote workforce. And I know a lot of our listeners are dealing with hybrid work, remote work, return to office, that sort of thing. So just from your perspective, how has that transition worked? The good, the bad, and potentially the ugly. Just to provide your insights.
Yeah, no, the reason for moving in that direction, I'll share that first, and then I'll move on to the nitty gritty. So in January, when the board met, we decided to do a strategic planning session. And during one of those conversations, somebody asked, so why do we have the building? We actually owned the real estate in Virginia. And the building was designed, it could easily accommodate 25 people. And APPA had a staff of 9. And they were coming twice a week into the office. So space utilization, as we just talked about, was not very high. So we started looking at the cost of owning that building, because again, as we discussed, it's not just the cost of the building that you buy, it's also the owning and operating. And we still, even though we are a nonprofit, we still had to pay the real estate taxes on that property. So ultimately, the decision was made by the board to divest from real estate. And we did, and we got really lucky that we found a buyer within 15 minutes of listing the property. So commercial real estate not doing very hard, we got very fortunate, and we divested in July. But between the January and July timeframe, because we saw this coming, we started pivoting to what will it take for us to become remote. And one of the biggest things we did was, technology is relatively cheap. So every staff member had a setup that they can be fully productive when they became remote. And yes, the pandemic in 2020 was the horriblest, one of the most horrible thing in the longest time in the recent past. But it also taught us that remote work is possible. And technology elevated its game, and we became very effective in working. Now, those who are struggling with remote work, there are 2 things I would say. You have to be intentional about making sure that the team stays connected. So for example, before this call started, I told you that I need to text somebody that I'm not going to be on a call. That call is our daily stand-up. So every morning at 9 a.m. Central, everybody in the team gets on this call and they talk about, what did you do yesterday? What are you working on today? Is there any blockers that any other team member can help you with? So that intentionality makes it very important for us to be productive. The second piece I would say is, don't measure the person's performance by number of hours they're in their seat, but as managers, elevate your expectations and elevate your skills to measure outcomes. So when you start doing that, it doesn't matter if somebody worked from 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. straight, like a typical office worker would, or they worked from 8 a.m. to 10 a.m. and then they had a doctor's appointment, so they're gone for 2 hours. They came back and they worked till 6, 7 p.m. That day. So it's more about how we accept that mindset that we are going to be productive no matter what. That makes a difference. Now, I'll be honest, in a smaller team, it's easier to do. In a larger team, it's a little harder to do.
Yeah,
and we're 120.
Yeah, we're 120, mostly remote, and Yeah, it was easier with a smaller team for sure. So,
Right.
but no, that's great. I think it's great advice whether it's a small team or a large team, right? That communication is so critically important. And yeah, I mean, I think like we're the same way, right? Look, if you got to pick your kid up at school at 3 o'clock,
Go do
go and
it.
just yeah, as long as you're getting the work done that's expected, and I don't care if it's 5 o'clock in the morning or 11 o'clock at night or whatever, like whatever works for you and your lifestyle. I think that's an important one.
Exactly.
So
Exactly.
excellent. Well, Lalit, thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate it. I appreciate you missing your daily stand up for us as well. Much appreciated. Your insights were excellent. For all of our listeners, if you're in and around the facility infrastructure asset management space and you're not involved in APPA, I would highly recommend you check it out, and really appreciate it. I'm sure my audience does too. Thanks for joining us on Telling Your Asset Management Story, this special bonus episode.
Thank you, Bill. Thank you for having me.
Lalit, thanks for sharing your insights with us. Your perspective highlights how asset management is evolving into strategic conversation about risk, value, and long-term planning. As institutions face new challenges, collaboration and shared learning across the industry will be more important than ever. Thanks again for joining us on Telling Your Asset Management Story.